Happy Monday, college football fans. My name is Phil. I am joined today by former Ohio State All-American lineman Kirk Barton, where we will recap a really exciting weekend across the college football landscape. We had a lot of sparks, including actual fireworks down in Knoxville as the Tennessee Volunteers knocked off the Alabama Crimson Tide. Across the college football landscape, we had Oklahoma State, USC, Penn State, all going down, among other teams. Really a lot of excitement, but that November 26th date looms large. Ohio State versus Michigan, going to have huge implications for the college football playoff. We're here to cover all of that and a lot more. So if you haven't checked out BuckeyeScoop.com, I strongly encourage you to go join the site. If not, subscribe here, give us a like, engage with us on these videos. We have a very supportive community. It's pro-Ohio State. We're looking for new members. We're going to give you the insights, cross-recruiting, the college football landscape, and, of course, Ohio State. So with that, I bring you today's conversation with Kirk Barton. Thank you. Welcome to the Buckeye Scoop. My name is Phil. I'm joined by former All-American Ohio State lineman Kirk Barton. A crazy weekend across the college football landscape. Alabama goes down 52-49. What a scene in Knoxville. I guess I wanted to ask you, as a player, do you actually like it when fans rush the field? And did that ever happen when you were at Ohio State in your playing days?
You know, I actually love it just because it means that we probably just won a really big game. It usually means we beat Michigan. The two times it happened when I played was the 1-2 Michigan game, and in 2004, we played Michigan at home. We were huge underdogs, probably 14-point dogs, which is a lot for an Ohio State-Michigan game. And we both times our fans stormed the field. 2006 obviously was probably one of the most iconic photos ever just because there were just, so many people on the field. It was a big win. It was the 1-2 game. It was the most hyped Ohio State home game probably ever, just because it was the rivalry. It was 1-2. It was a great game, 42-39. And as soon as the clock hit zeros, it was straight nuts. And I remember I found my girlfriend at the time. We got a good photo on the sideline, but it was it's crazy. People are excited, and you're happy for them because you know how invested people are in the program, the people that support the program, the people that love the program. So when they get to let that emotion pour out onto the field, so to speak, and they get to take the photos, and people were ripping the grass up because they knew that was literally the last game that would ever be played in Ohio Stadium with grass. So everyone was taking sod out because it was, sod came right up like it was sand because it was brand new grass. They just planted it. So, but it was exciting. And you love to see the people that support Ohio State in such great spirits after a game like that.
What do you think, grass versus turf? I've heard a lot of debate about that. What do you prefer playing on?
The hard part for me is it depends on how good the grass is. The problem with Ohio Stadium is when they installed AA deck and they dug the stadium down is the grass could never get the correct amount of sunlight. So it was really difficult to maintain good grass in the stadium. So the field was always slippery, which again, I don't know if that makes sense to people. It's kind of like the worst field in the entire country is the one that's in Arizona, the one we played the Florida Gators on. And again, this has nothing to do with why Florida was way better than us.
Nothing to do with the game.
So this is not an excuse, but they play with grass that literally is on like a conveyor belt that goes out into the sun, and then they roll it into the game so they can have natural grass inside of a dome. And that grass was very slick, very slippery. You see guys falling all over the place. Like if you go back and watch the 06 Michigan game, you'll see moments where I remember Brian Robisky caught a big pass and he kind of broke towards the middle of the field, and you saw 3 Michigan DBs slide and fall, because the grass, they got to put their cleats in the ground and turn and run, and it gives. And I saw there were times where Lamar Woodley be in a 3-point stance and real low, and he'd come out of his stance, he'd slip, and the big chunk of grass would fly up in the air. And it was kind of funny. I was just glad that we won that game, but I grew to really like field turf just because it was consistent. I don't like, my knees always felt terrible playing on turf. I wouldn't want to play a long NFL career on turf because I can't imagine how bad the knees are. I always liked practicing on grass. That was something that we would do with like Urban Meyer. We would take the guys off on the grass when we wanted to take a little bit easier on them because the grass doesn't hold heat for one. So in the summer when you're working out, it's literally like 20 degrees cooler on grass than it is on the turf. And it's softer to land on. You don't get your elbows all shredded up with strawberries if you slide across the grass the way you do with the turf. So I don't know. I really like great grass, and they're, like Iowa has they had really good grass, and Penn State had good grass. Northwestern had terrible grass. Yeah. So again, I know that's kind of a long-winded version of the question, but I liked Ohio State's AstroTurf my senior year. It was good. It was consistent. It was fast, which, when what we are, we're a speedy team, and we like to throw the ball and take advantage of our speed. So when you have a good fast surface for these guys to run on, it helps, and plus it's a consistent surface that you can replicate in practice because we have the same turf at practice that we do at the shoes. So that's good. And again, I know that sounds weird, but not all turfs are the same, I promise you.
Yeah, I saw actually a graphic for the Miami Dolphins Minnesota game that the outside temperature was 90 degrees, but on the field it was 120 degrees, right? So a pretty big contrast. But it's funny that that's still an issue at like the highest level of college football because I remember in high school, some of these grass fields, I swear there'd be like hills on the field and rocks, right? So it's funny that's still an issue. So anyways, turning to the college football landscape. So USC went down to Utah 43-42. Oklahoma State going down to TCU 43-40. Is there really any scenario left where the Big 12 or the Pac-12, they're getting a team into the college football playoff, even if TCU runs a table? Seems unlikely at this point, right?
I don't think so. I think that it's, the one team that would have, if they would have slipped up, would have been Texas, but they lost to Tech and they're out of it. I mean, it's really sad that Quinn Ewers got hurt because if Quinn doesn't get hurt, they probably are undefeated right now. They probably would have beat Bama and they probably would have ran through Texas Tech because they're a totally different animal when he's a quarterback. But I just think that there's too much power in the SEC. I think the Big Ten is going to get either Ohio State or Michigan into the playoff. I think the SEC is going to get two. And then that last one is going to be kind of a wild card. Who knows? I mean, it'll be interesting to see how the Georgia-Tennessee game shakes out, how the SEC championship game shakes out, how the Ohio State-Michigan game shakes out. There's going to be a lot of interesting scenarios. If Ohio State loses by 1 point to Michigan and doesn't make the Big Ten title game, and Michigan's in it, and do they both get in? I mean, it's going to be, it's a long ways away. A lot of things can happen. A lot of injuries can happen. So, it's hard to tell right now, but, it wouldn't surprise me if Clemson snuck in there because I just don't think there's anybody in the ACC that can challenge them, even though I don't think that they are very good. So obviously two SEC schools, Ohio State or Michigan and Clemson seem like the likely four. And that's kind of like how it's been for the last few years now anyways.
Yeah, it pains me to admit it, but Michigan looked really good. I mean, they were completely dominant over Penn State. I know the game was close at the half, but the score didn't really reflect what was going on in the field. So I know the early schedule is weak, but thoughts on Michigan? It seems like that end of season date is looming large. It is going to be a game for the ages. I think this Ohio State team is fantastic, but I have to admit Michigan, and I called it wrong. I thought Penn State would be right there with them in that game, and Michigan really took it to them. So thoughts on that Michigan team and the game 10 this year?
Well, I mean, Michigan, they have a culture. They believe in what they do. Jim Harbaugh has done the same thing that he did at San Francisco. They're a power running team. And in an era where football has never been softer and more 7-on-7-ish and, like perimeter based, like they ain't that. They run it. They run it hard. They run counter, power, zone. That's their hallmark, and they're really good at it. And they're really physical. They're physical on both lines. But again, I don't know if they've beaten anybody that's truly real. I don't think Penn State's real. And that's the funny thing about like the Ohio State Michigan game is like I think that's the first time that those two are both going to really see real opponents. Like I mean, Wisconsin just lost to Michigan State, who stinks. Notre Dame lost to Stanford, who stinks. So, has Ohio State really, really played a good team? Not really. I mean, and again, it's not their fault. They have to play who's scheduled, and this isn't, Madden or NCAA football where you can change your opponent because someone's terrible, but you got to play who's in front of you. And when you see Wisconsin on the schedule, generally you think it's going to be a very physical and dominant opponent, and they're just terrible right now. I mean, they fired their coach. They're trying to change the culture. Michigan State is way down from where they were. I think Notre Dame is a disaster in making. Losing to that Stanford team was really poor, and I think Penn State is fool's gold because they went down and beat a bad Auburn team. People got all jazzed up about them. They hadn't played anybody, and that's the hard part about the Big Ten is a lot of it's just kind of like the SEC. Like teams get these inflated rankings because they beat up on the other Big Ten schools that are because after like the top three or so the Penn State, the Michigan, the Ohio State, it just falls off a cliff. So you can feast on these lower tier Big Ten schools and get to 5-0, 6-0, be a top 10 school, but are you really a top 10 school, or are you just not really played anybody? So I think that, once Ohio State sees Michigan and vice versa, it'll be a massive level jump for both teams in terms of the opponents that they've seen all year.
On that note, Penn State, obviously really tough defeat. They really got bullied and seemed unprepared to play. Finally got Drew Aller in. There seems to be a lot of pressure on James Franklin. What's going on down there, and how long is this experiment with Coach Franklin going to continue?
Well, I mean, I just think he's complete fool's gold. I think he's a phony. I think, he's got to get Drew Aller going. He's got to just, say, screw it, go play. You got to go be the guy. I mean, Quinn Ewers is the same age as Drew Aller, and Quinn Ewers is one of the top quarterbacks in the entire country. And I think that you need to be able to throw the ball in modern college football. And the kid they got now, Clifford, can't throw it. Aller can. And you're going to have to go take your lumps. Like that's the part about football is if you're not real good, but you have a talented young kid, you just got to play him and roll with it, which is tough, but that's just how it's going to have to be. And I think, he's a guy he's lived off of some big pendulum swings, like when they beat Ohio State in 16, and
they're still living off that one.
Well, that's what I'm saying. So it's like, they got him an extension, and everyone's Penn State's back, and then they got really good when they had Saquon in 17. That incredible team, and it just was one of those things where they they really they're not where they need to be. But again, I don't know what they're these guys. Athletic directors are only as faithful as their options generally. If they're good. So I don't know who would be the next guy that could take Penn State to the next level. They don't have like a Urban Meyer lurking around. They don't have a Greg Schiano lurking around. They don't have, it's like Rutgers, like if they whack their coach, they got Greg Schiano coming. So that's an upgrade. So, Ohio State could whack a coach because they've got, a substantial upgrade who's waiting in the wings. So, I mean, it's, like USC, they can get Lincoln Riley. Like, these guys are as faithful as their options. And, like if Florida, could get Urban Meyer to come back, then they'd probably fire the coach they have now. But that's just kind of where the gig is. And I don't know who would be the next guy at Penn State. So it's going to be really interesting to see what happens. But I think, with the rest of his contract and his buyout, I mean, it's a big decision to whack these coaches because, I mean, it's a financial catastrophe when you have to pay these guys and pay the staffs out for years based on hiring someone that might not even be much of an upgrade or a downgrade.
Yeah, it's a good point. They're only as faithful as their options. I kind of laugh and scoff at people who are, when you think about like Brian Hartline and his option, like, look, we're all human. At the end of the day, if you're getting like a 400% increase in your salary, you can go to a top school and get promoted. Like, of course, everyone's going to consider that. So need to be realistic. So turning back to Ohio State. So we have this game against Iowa, opened up as a 21.5 point favorite. Are you taking the Buckeyes with that point spread?
I mean, I don't know how you can't, just because Iowa struggles to score 7 points, and Ohio State will have the best defense they've seen all year. They're awful on defense. I know that like they'll always be like ranked. It's like Penn State last year was like, or excuse me, last week was like 5th in the nation against the rush, but they beat like Portland State and, Akron and, Antarctica and whoever else. But they hadn't played like a team like Michigan who could actually run the ball, and then they got scorched. So, I think Iowa, they just never have had the athletes to match up with us. They try hard and they mean well and cute little program, but again, they're archaic. And again, due to geography, I don't think that they'll ever be. They're a lot like Nebraska.
I think they've maxed. I think they've maxed out. Honestly, for their geography, I think Iowa fans should be pretty happy every couple of years. Like they're winning or going to the Big Ten championship, competing on a national level. Like I think that's pretty good, given that they have some hurdles that like an Ohio State wouldn't have with the program and the recruiting and all the other things that they have as tied to it.
Yeah, I don't think that they're viewed as a hit program, as a cool program, as a Q rating program, the way that Ohio State is. Really, Ohio State's the only school in the North. Michigan to a degree, because they have the Jordan uniforms. But like Nebraska, Iowa, like none of these kids in the South think that either of those schools are cool. They're so far behind it. And again, like when you're in states where you don't have any talent, it's really hard to be competitive. Like Ohio State and the state of Ohio's talent level has never been worse in high school football. So, that's why we're so national now. That's why we go to Georgia, Florida, even more so than we used to. Like in 2002, when the year before I got here, 80% of our class, they're all Ohio. And you get Troy Smith, you get Dante Whitner, you get Maurice Claret, you get those are first round Heisman type winning guys, and those guys don't exist in Ohio anymore.
It's good to see. Glenville's making like a little bit of a comeback, but not even close to the level you're talking about, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So anyways, so we just went through the bye week. So as a program, like what was you think the most important thing for the team to accomplish during this bye week?
The two biggest things for me are you got to rest the guys that need rested. There's guys that have ailments that maybe aren't noticeable to the general public. There's guys that have nagging foot, shoulder, knee, elbow. If any guy had any sort of ailment, I had a broken foot in 05 last year that we had a bye weekend. Jim Tressel said, you're not doing anything this week. You're going to be in the training room and we're going to condition you. You're going to be in the weight room. You're going to get, keep your wind up, which I love being conditioned just because, you gotta, if you're going to miss practice, you better do something to keep your gas up. You can't just be laying around all day eating Cheetos and then all of a sudden you go back to practice the week after the bye week and you're fat and out of shape. So, as long as you're getting conditioned, I didn't mind not practicing, not putting the helmet and pads on and all that. As long as I was in the weight room, on the Stairmaster for an hour, getting a good workout in, keeping my legs. But, I had a broken foot. So, it was really painful to practice. I still practice on it for the rest of the year. Played on it for the rest of the year, but it is what it is. You strap it up and you do what you got to do. But I think the second most important thing is you really got to evaluate the bottom of your roster. I think you got to scrimmage the guys that don't play, scrimmage the young guys. Really, take it to them. I would have. I don't think you can make Callum McCord live. I'd have Devin Brown live. I'm sure they probably didn't do that, but. Yeah. Back in the days of with Trust and Urban, we'd make the third quarterback a live guy. So it puts the pressure on the offensive line.
No black jersey.
To block.
Take him down.
Yeah, no black jersey. Well, because you got to see if you can pass block. And again, you're not done to get the quarterback killed, but it's real life. If these guys can't block the DNs or D line or whatever, it's you gotta figure out how hard you gotta go hit the portal. How many spots you're gonna have open for recruiting? Do you adjust your recruiting board because there might be kids that are portaled out. And that goes for everywhere. That goes to receiver, running back. You're kind of all over the map. And I think that, you really got to get a good evaluation of these kids because, when they go play scout team, it's always kind of they go fast and stuff, but it's not the same as scrimmaging. Like scrimmaging is it's like life and death. It's like a game. When these guys are in a game, these guys are going hard. So that's not the same tempo as playing scout team, which is, where the 2s and 3s give you a look of what Iowa's going to do or whatever. So, I think you got to have these guys scrimmage. They have to run your plays, not Iowa's plays, not carded plays. So then you can see if they know the book, see if they know the playbook, see if they know what to do, blitz against them. Again, it's just seeing what you got, and then it juices them up a little bit because they know that, hey, they got to bring it because they're scrimmaging today, and I think that's probably
is it kind of like bull practice? Because I feel like the bowl game practice, there's always like these legends of like the young guys who are stepping up.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, we used to do Showtime practices, and the Showtime practices were huge for young guys because if you're not a starter, I mean, you were in the Showtime scrimmage. I mean, we scrimmaged at the end of every practice. I mean, they'd send all Will Smith and Darian Scott and all the old guys and the starters, they'd send those guys in, but the young guys were scrimmaging. And I mean, you had to show up because this isn't, because when you go to scout team, like you don't have Jim Tressel, you don't have your head coach, you don't have Urban Meyer watching you, Ryan Day watching you. Ryan's over on the offensive field, and then Jim Knowles is on the defensive
field. It's your time to shine.
But when you have all the coaches watching you, and then they're going to evaluate the scrimmage, and then like you're good on good, and there's no, well, hey, Will Smith told me to go slow. It's like, no, this is like, you're going against like Jay Richardson or whoever. You're going against like guys that, and you're competing, and they, we evaluate the scrimmages and say, hey, this guy did great, and we got to bump him up, or we got to start playing him, or we got to, look for somebody else. I mean, because now it's a whole different world now with the portal. Because the portal, you can go out and sign free agents, and you have to. Like, I mean, if you're, you look at that Alabama team, their running back was a free agent, their left tackle was a free agent. Like, they went out and signed free agents. They got a left tackle from Vanderbilt, 4-year starter. They got Jahmyr Gibbs, and that's just kind of, the new wave of college football. And we got to do that, especially next year, because there's going to be some positions we really got to bolster.
Yeah, it's certainly a new era. You're sort of always showcasing yourself. It might not even be for Ohio State. If you shine and you don't have a spot, it might be for the transfer portal. Some other team gets word on your performance, and they're coming in to grab you as a potential playmaker on a new team. So that's all we have for today. It's a wrap on Monday. If you haven't checked out BuckeyeScoop.com, I strongly encourage you to join. Where else can you get former players like Kirk Barton, TJ Downing, C. Grant to give you really amazing content? It's a very supportive community, a lot on college football, and of course Ohio State. So that's all we have for today. Thank you so much, Kirk, and that's a wrap.